All right, so here's module 2. Again, like I said in the last video, all these questions, there's multiple ways to do them. You could do them by hand. You could use the calculator, use Desmos. I'm just going to do it in a way that I think is repetitive. Um, Again, try to make things as easy for us to where we don't have to do as much math by hand, because I just feel like that's where we make a lot of mistakes. So go through, you'll be able to see everything that I'm typing, and hopefully this will be a helpful little review. All right, so look at number 1. It says Isabel grows potatoes in her garden. This year, she harvested 760 potatoes and saved 10% of them to plant next year. How many of the harvested potatoes did Isabel save to plant next year? So for this question, we hopefully can kind of see how it relates to where we're doing 10% of the potatoes. So whenever they say percent of, that basically means times. We're saying that the saved potatoes is equal to 10% of, so times the number of potatoes. So here they told us it was 760. And so can pull up our calculator. And here we don't even have to use the solve function. I can just do control divide. 10 over 100 times 760. So 76. All right. So looking at number 2. What is the y-intercept of the graph shown? So remember, there's 2 ways to think about y-intercept. Y-intercept is where it touches the y-axis, or another way is when x is equal to 0. If we see all these answers, or actually not all these answers, A and B are the only ones that have x is equal to 0. And they give us the graph so we can kind of look. It touches the y-axis right there, so that's the point 0, 2. Okay, so number 3. What length in centimeters is equivalent to a length of 51 meters? And they do tell us that 1 meter equals 100 centimeters. I believe that the CAS calculator can do this really well. I always say that if it's a unit that you know, the calculator can probably do the conversion. If you are unaware of what that certain unit is, then you probably will have to do it by hand using dimensional analysis. This is a very easy one. So again, a lot of people do this by hand, but I'm still going to use the calculator. So to use the CAS calculator to unit conversion, we're going to hit the little book symbol. And then we're going to hit 3. So I already have it up. And then we'll select conversion assistance. We'll hit enter. And then here is where we will make the decision. We will choose velocity if it is a rate. So in this question, we are going from meters to centimeters. Those are not rates. What I mean by a rate is a unit per unit. So if it's not a rate, we are going to choose anything. So anything but velocity. I've been saying to choose time. We're not even going to worry about choosing the units. So we are going to hit enter. And so now it's going to say answer S_S. And we are going to go over and we are going to delete the A and S, and we're going to put the number they gave us. So they said 51 meters. And then right now the _S means seconds. We're going to want to make that meters. So the abbreviation for meters is _M. So I'm just going to delete the S, put M. And we want to convert centimeters. Abbreviation for centimeters is CM. And we'll hit enter. So 51 meters is 5,100 centimeters. So it's C. The abbreviations for the units are mostly what you would probably think of when you write them down. If you ever are not sure, you can go into the book and actually go to conversion assistant. And then if you know you're doing a length, you could choose length. And from here, you can be like, yeah, there's meter, there's centimeter. You could do it that way. I just think, honestly, it's longer than just typing it out by hand. So yeah, so unit conversion, as long as you know what the units are, the calculator probably does as well. So you can just type it in the calculator. All right, number 4. A bus is traveling at a constant speed along a straight portion of road. The equation d is equal to 30t gives the distance, d in feet from a road marker, that the bus will be t seconds after passing the marker. How many feet from the marker will the bus be 2 seconds after passing the marker? Well, t is the number of seconds, and here they're telling us that we have 2 seconds. So that means I could say t is equal to 2. And they're asking for how many feet. Well, d is the number of feet. So we're going to want to solve this for d. So we're really saying d is equal to 30 times 2. Again, I'm going to go ahead and use the calculator because the calculator will mess this up. So 30 times 2. So 60. All right. So number 5, which expression is equivalent to 20w minus parentheses 4w plus 3w? So whenever you see them say which expression is equivalent to, that's a tell that you can pick numbers for the letters. No matter how many letters there are, here we only have one letter we don't know, so we're only going to have to pick one number. If I had another letter, I would just pick another number. I usually say go ahead and just start with 3. You may have to pay attention. There are some questions you may have to be careful as to which number you pick. So they may say, hey, WSB greater than 6. So again, we'd have to pick something that fits that range that they're giving us. But here they didn't, so I'm just going to say W is 3. So now I can go into the calculator, and we're just going to guess and check. So wherever I see W, I'm going to put 3. So I'm going to say 20 times 3 minus parentheses 4 times 3 plus 3 times 3, enter. So we got 39. So I'm going to go into every single answer and plug in 3 for W and see which one gives me 39 as well. So I'm just going to go in order. So 10 times 3. So 30, so the answer is not A. So then 13 times 30, times 3, excuse me, is 39. So the answer is B. What I have written here, I would recommend writing down when you're doing the test. So that way you don't have to just try to remember what you picked and what you got. So if they ever say which expression is equivalent to, you can pick your own numbers, plug into the calculator, and guess and check. All right. Number 6. If 6 plus x equals 9, what is the value of 18 plus 3x? Well, they're asking for what the value of this expression is, and it has x in it. Well, we can figure out what x is from this one equation and then plug it into our 18 plus 3x. So I'm going to solve the given equation for x. So again, I'm going to pull up the calculator. I'm going to do menu 3-1, and then it's 6 plus x equals 9, comma x. And I'll hit enter. So we get x equals 3. And now I'm going to plug that into the other equation. I'm just going to use the calculator. So it's just 18 plus 3 times x, which we just said was 3. Enter. So we get 27. All right. Let's looking at number 7. For the given equation relates the variables x and y. For what value of x does the value of y reach its minimum? So if they're ever asking for the minimum of a graph or of an equation, that is a tell that you can probably do this in Desmos and just graph it. So we're just going to graph this equation. So it's y equals x squared minus 14x plus 22. So we're going to graph it, but we're going to look for the minimum. So we just have to move. And the nice thing is in Desmos, they will put a little dot. So if you see, I have a little dot that I can click at the minimum. So for this question, what we have to be careful of is, do they want the x or the y? So they could ask for either one. If they say the letter x, they want the x. If they do not say the letter x, they want the y. So since this says for what value of x, they said the x, so they want the x for this. So the answer is 7. If they just said what is the minimum, so didn't say the letter x, they just said what is the minimum, then we would put the y coordinate. All right. So now looking at number 8. Which expression is equivalent to 9x squared plus 5x? So it's another question with which expression is equivalent. So we are going to pick a number for x. I just, again, usually say start with 3. And we are going to go into our calculator. And we are going to just plug in the original expression. So 9 times 3 squared plus 5 times 3. And when we do that, we get 96. So we're going to go into each answer choice, and wherever we see x, we're just going to plug in 3, and we should get 96. We'll try answer choice A. So 3 times parentheses 9 times 3 plus 5, 96. So thankfully the answer is A. We don't have to type in a whole bunch of stuff. All right. Number 9. In triangle ABC, the measure of angle B is 52 degrees, and the measure of angle C is 17 degrees. What is the measure of angle A? Well, what's true about the angle measures of a triangle? They have to all add up to 180. So we could say angle A plus B, which is 52, plus C, which is 17, should all equal 180. So we just made an equation with an unknown. So use the calculator. We're going to go to menu, 3-1. We'll use letter A. So A plus 52 plus 17 equals 180, comma A. So we get 111. All right. Number 10. The graphs of the equations in the given system of equations intersect at the point xy in the xy plane. What is the value of y? Remember, if they ever say intersect or intersection, that means solution. So there's a solution, and they're just asking for the y solution. So to find the solutions to a system of equations, we can again go into our calculator, and we go to menu 3, 7, enter. And then here we only have 2 equations. Our variables x and y, so we don't have to do anything of that. So we can hit enter again. And then we just type x equals 8. Move down to the next spot, y equals. So I'm just writing the equations into the calculator, x squared plus 8. So they have x equals 8 and y equals 72. They want the y, so 72. So anytime they have a system, it's a safe bet to say that you're probably supposed to solve the system, which I recommend using the calculator. Okay. Number 11. It says the scatter plots show the relationship between two variables, x and y. A line of best fit is also shown. Which of the following equations best represents the line of best fit shown? So for this question, we are going to use Desmos. I feel like if we're ever trying to find the equation line written as y equals mx plus b, which all of these answers are written as y equals mx plus b, then I really like Desmos. We'll actually talk about 2 ways we could use Desmos for this question. In order to use Desmos, the first method, so we'll pull up Desmos, is we can make a table as long as we have either 2 points or the slope in a point. So with a scatter plot, we are going to pick points on the line. And with the scatter plot, we don't actually pick dots. I just mean points on the line. So I'm going to pick some points from this line that I'm going to have a decent estimate. We're not going to have to be perfect, but there should be points that are much closer for some than others. So the first point that I'm going to pick is this point right here. So that's at 8, 7. So I'm going to write down that point, 8, 7. And then another point we'll pick that I think is pretty close is maybe we'll pick this point down here. So again, notice how neither spot I picked wasn't an actual dot. I don't need to pick a dot with a scatter plot if they draw the line of best fit. So that point is 13, 3. So now in Desmos, to find the equation, if I have 2 points, I can just hit the plus sign and add a table. And then I'm just going to type the points that I just did. So 8, 7. And the other point was, I accidentally moved do that. And then 13. Oh my goodness, how I have this set up. 13, 3. I'll do it this way. 13, 3. And then I can hit this little symbol in the top left. And then it gives me right here the equation. Now, our equations in the problem are not written as the form mx plus b, they just switch the order. So here it's b plus mx. So the line that we got here, the slope should be negative 0.8 or something really close to that because it's a scatter plot. And then the b value should be about 13.4. So b is really close. Okay, so this is one way to do this question. The other way to do this question is to just, if they ever give you the graph and say, what's the equation that represents this graph, you can just make your window the exact same. So I'm going to go to graph settings. And I'm going to do, this graph goes from 0 to 14 in the x direction. And then the y direction, so we'll change the y here, goes from 0 to 15. So now that's my graph. And what I can do is just graph all the answers. And to be honest, in the Blue Book app, this will even look better than how I'm showing you. I can just graph the answers and see which one looks the most like the line that they gave us. So I'm just trying to choice A. And if you look, that's not even in the window. So the answer is definitely not A. But then if I try B, which is minus, that pretty much, again, with how I have the window set up, it doesn't look like it, and Desmos will look much more like it. But you can just guess and check. All the other answers will be nothing close. So if I try answer choice C, I put the negative sign in front, you don't even see the graph. And if I try answer choice D, the graph is not even shown. So you can just guess and check by just graphing the answers and seeing does it look like the graph they gave us, and you can make the window the exact same. Again, I think this will work much better in the Blue Book app with Desmos rather than how I have the screen set up. All right, so that's number 11. So let's look at number 12. So it says the function f is defined by f of x equals 8 times the square root of x. For what value of x does f of x equal 48? So they're telling us that f of x equals 48. So wherever we see f of x, we can replace it with 48. So I'm just going to substitute that in for the entirety of f of x. So we're really saying 48 equals 8 times the square root of x. And they're asking for the value of x. So I just made an equation. So I can now solve for x. So I can do menu 3-1, 48 equals 8 square root of x. We'll move outside the square root and put comma x. So we get 36. All right. That's number 13. A circle has a center O, and points R and S lie on the circle. In triangle ORS, the measure of angle ROS is 88 degrees. What is the measure of angle RSO? So let's do this. We'll just draw our best circle that we can. That was a pretty decent circle. So the center is O. R and S are somewhere on the circle, so that ROS makes a 88-degree angle. So if I said that's R, to make angle ROS, S would maybe be like somewhere about here. That's about 88 degrees. So this is S. And then they said triangle ORS, so I'm just going to connect R and S. And they're asking for the measure of angle RSO. So RSO would be, we'll mark it with red. They want to know that angle. So that's kind of the angle we're going to know. What we have to realize is that these two sides right here are both the radius, so they're equal to each other. So we just made an isosceles triangle, which means that our other two angles are base angles, and they have to be the same. So if we just call this x, let's just call this x, and this is x. Well, all those angles have to add up to 180 degrees. So we just made an equation that has one unknown. So again, we can pull up our calculator and go to menu 3-1. X plus x plus 88 equals 180, comma x. So we get x equals 46. And so that's our answer. Cool. So drawing our shapes is generally a very helpful thing. I would recommend drawing your shapes usually. All right, so 14 says, what is the sum of the solutions to the given equation? So generally speaking, if you see them say solutions, whether they want to know just what is the solution here, the sum of the solutions, we're usually going to use, try to solve for x. So here, they want the sum of the solutions. We're going to find the solutions and then add them, because sum, of course, means add. So to find the solutions to a single equation, we like to use our calculator. So we're going to go to menu 3, 1. And here we have x, then parentheses. So if you have a letter in front of parentheses, remember we have to put times. So x times parentheses, x plus 1, close parentheses, minus 56, equals 4x times parentheses, x minus 7, comma x, because we have to tell the calculator what to solve for. And so we end up getting x equals 8/3 or x equals 7. And so what are we supposed to do with these two solutions? We are supposed to add them. So I'm just going to do control divide 8/3 plus 7, and we get 29/3. I would recommend leaving your answer as a fraction unless they ask for for you to round it or to the nearest whole number. You do not have to put a decimal unless the answer choices are all decimals for a multiple choice question. All right, number 15. The solution to the given systems of equations is x comma y. What is the value of 5x? Well, if we want to know the value of 5x, it would probably be helpful to know the value of x. And if we have a system of equations, we can just solve the system. So again, we'll pull up our calculator, and we will go to menu 3, 7, enter. Our variables are x and y, so we'll just do enter again. And now we're just typing in the equations. Y equals 3x. And then 2x plus y equals 12. Enter. So we get x equals 12/5, but they want to know 5 times x. So I'll just do 5 times control divide. Our x is 12/5. And we get 12. So again, generally, if you see a system, you're probably going to want to solve the system of equations. Okay. Number 16. A cube has an edge length of 41 inches. What is the volume in cubic inches of the cube? Well, the volume of a cube is just, we usually say side cubed, but technically for a cube, we call the sides edges. So saying the edge length, that's them saying basically S is equal to 41. So we're just going to figure out what 41 cubed is. So again, we'll just pull up the calculator. 41 cubed. So 68,921. The answer is D. This is just knowing a formula. They have asked about cubes a decent amount. So there's a chance you could see cubes on the test. All right, number 17. It says the given function P models the population of Lowell 2 years after a census, or T years after a census, a census. Which of the following functions best models the population of Lowell M months after the census? So right now they're showing us this expression in terms of T number of years. They just want to express this in terms of M number of months. Whenever we're changing the units for an exponential, the only part that will usually be changing for us is the exponent. So here the 90,000 times 1.06 is not likely to change. So the answer, just based off that, would pretty much have to be D. Now, I'm going to show you the actual math way to do this. But just knowing that usually when we're just changing from T years to M months, or maybe it's T years to D decades, the only part that will actually change is the exponent. Most likely. So what really happening here is what this is showing us. The exponent, I can think of it as 1/1. So that's what the exponent up here is saying. I'm just making it into a fraction. It's like saying 1t/1. And right now this is saying that we're going to do this multiplication of 1.06 one time every 1 year. So the number on the bottom up in the exponent is has a unit, and it's the same unit that that letter is in. So since t is years, that one on the bottom is also years. But we want to think about this in terms of months. So I just have to think about this this thing as converting it in terms of months. And this is where we did unit conversion earlier. This is when we're doing it by hand. It's going to be probably a simpler way, because we're just going to multiply by something that puts years on the top and months on the bottom. So we just have to think, what's the relationship between years and months? It's 1 year to every 12 months. So we can now say that the years, our units cancel here. So what we just did is we just multiply across, and what we now have is 1 over 12. So our exponent should now turn into 1 over 12, and then we just put the letter with it. So it's 1 over 12 and then times m. So then you can just multiply the top numbers, and that's where d comes from. And again, the parentheses part nor the number in the front, the 90,000, will change for these questions. Very common. I think this is one of the easier ways to do it. Again, this one, if you just know the 90,000 doesn't change, the 1.06 doesn't change, it only left us with D. All right, number 18. The solution to the given system of equations is x comma y. What is the value of y? So it's another system. So we're going to pull up our calculator, menu 37. Here, still x and y, so just enter. 6x plus 7y equals 28. And then 2x plus 2y, 2x plus 2 equals 10. So they want the y solution, so y is equal to -2. You notice they put the x solution, they'll almost always do that to make sure that we're paying attention to what it is we're trying to answer. Okay, so number 19. The minimum value of x is 12 less than 6 times another number n, which inequality shows the possible values of x. So a lot of times we say is, that usually means equals. Minimum value is going to change that, because if you notice, none of the answers have an equal sign. They all have inequalities. But I'm just saying that because notice how the x is by itself. It's x is, so that means the x should be by itself, and all the answers do that. We're not going to worry about the sign yet. Let's just try to figure out the right side. So they said 12 less than 6 times another number. So we're actually going to do 6 times the number, and then it's 12 less than that. So to do 12 less means to subtract 12. So right there, I can now look at the answer and see C or D and wrong. So we just have to figure out which sign. So by saying the minimum value of x, that means that's the smallest x could get, but it could get bigger. So since we're saying x can get bigger, greater, we want the greater than sign to open up to the x. If they would have said the maximum value, that means x could get smaller. So then that's where A comes from. But by minimum, it means x could get bigger. So that's why we use that greater than sign. All right, number 20. It says dataset A consists of the heights of 75 buildings and has a mean of 32 meters. Dataset B consists of the heights of 50 buildings and has a mean of 62 meters. Dataset C consists of the heights of the 125 buildings from datasets A and B. What is the mean in meters of dataset C? So dataset C is basically just taking both A and B and putting them together and calling it one dataset. What we are going to have to do, though, is we cannot just say, hey, I'm going to do the average of these two averages, or the mean of the two means they gave us. And the reason why we can't do that is because dataset A and dataset B are not equal weights. And what I'm just saying by that is dataset A has 75 buildings and dataset B has 50 buildings. So because dataset A has more buildings, it's going to affect our mean more. The more of something you have, the more important it is kind of the easy way to think about that. But if you're ever doing mean, there is a good chance you can probably use Desmos. So we are going to use Desmos. So for Desmos, to do mean, we're just going to type the word mean. And then we're just going to type all those numbers. Now, with data set A, I have 75 buildings and they have a mean of 32. So a way to think about that is we could just pretend that every single building in data set A was 32. Because if I do the mean of 32 75 times, so if I were to type out 32 75 times, so each building, I would get a mean of 32. So we're just going to pretend that every building has a height of 32 meters. But we're not going to actually type out 32 75 times. If something is happening repetitively, you could just do that number. So you just do that number, times however many times it showed up. So how many times did 75 show up? It showed up 75 times. And actually, mean this way is actually going to be a little bit tough. We're actually not going to do mean this way because now I'm thinking about it, Desmos doesn't work well with doing it that way. So we're going to use our calculator. So we're going to do mean. To do mean, we're going to add them. So actually, I'll write it down what we're going to do. So we're doing 32 times 75. And then we're going to add to that data set B. Well, that's a mean of 62 times 50. So what I just found is this part right here is all of the heights added together of data set A. This part is all of the heights added together of data set B. And so how many did I just do in total? Well, in total, there's 125 buildings. So I have to do divided by 125. So we're not using solve. This is just normal math. So I'm just going to type it in how I have it. So I'm going to do control divide. 32 times 75 plus 62 times 50 over 125. So we get 44. So I'll show you in Desmos why this doesn't work. Even though, again, most mean questions we can probably use in Desmos. Is because if I just did mean and I started trying to type what I was going to, which I was going to do 32 times 75, and then I put comma 62 times 50. All that's doing is the mean of those two numbers. It's not treating it as if I had 32 75 times. It's as if I just had a number that was whatever 35 times 75, 32 times 75 is, and then doing the average of that with 62 times 50. So it's still only doing the average of two numbers, but here we have to think of it as having 125 numbers. So that's why for this question, if we were to try to use Desmos, which again, I was even leaning towards, it wouldn't work. You would have to, with Desmos, unfortunately, if I wanted to do this, I would have to type mean, the number 32 75 times. And I have to just keep going until I count to 75. And then do the same thing and just type a bunch of 62s. So comma 62, comma 62, comma, and that's just unrealistic. So that's why not every mean question is necessarily super good to do in Desmos, but I think most of the time we will be able to. All right. So number 21. Says the graph of 9x minus 10y equals 19 is translated down 4 units in the xy plane. What is the x coordinate of the x-intercept of the resulting graph? Well, anytime we're doing translations, you can always just do the translation to the letter that the direction is in by putting it in parentheses with that letter, but flipping the sign. So here we're translating down, which means we're doing this translation to the y. So I'm not even going to have to do anything to the x. It's just going to stay 9x. But wherever I see y, I'm going to put parenthesis. And then I'm going to put y. And if I'm moving down, the opposite sign of down, is plus 4. And then equals 19. So wherever I saw y, I replaced it with parentheses y plus 4 to show a shift of down 4. If I was moving up, that's when I would do a minus sign. If I was translating horizontally, I would do the same exact thing, but I would just do it to the x, and then I wouldn't do anything to the y. And so that equation that I just wrote is now the translated graph that we are curious about. And we're trying to find the x-coordinate of the x-intercept. So if they say x-intercept, they want to know when y equals 0. So that means I'm now going to solve this equation, but wherever I see y, I'm going to replace it with 0. And I'm going to solve for x. So I can pull up the calculator, and I'm going to do menu 3-1, and I'm going to type in my equation, 9x minus 10, parentheses, y plus 4, but we know y should be 0, so I'm going to put 0 plus 4 equals 19, comma, x, so 59 over 9. Because remember, x-intercept means find the value of x when y is 0. All right, 22. It says two variables, x and y, are related such that for each increase of 1 in the value of x, the value of y increases by a factor of 4. When x is equal to 0 and y is equal to 200, which equation represents this relationship? So whenever they say something is increasing by a factor of 4, the word factor just means that we're multiplying. So we're multiplying by 4 is what that's basically saying. And the answer that shows that we are continually, and I should say we're continually multiplying by that number, the answer that does that for us is D. So with these exponential questions, inside the parentheses is basically where we put the factor. So here, since it's a factor of 4, I want to see the number 4 in the parentheses because it means we're continually multiplying by the number 4 each time. So that leaves us D. All right, number 23. One solution to the given equation can be written as 1 plus the square root of k, where k is a constant. What is the value of k? Well, they said solution. K is just in the solution. So we're going to find the solutions. So we're going to pull up our calculator, and we're going to go to menu 3-1 because it's one equation. It's x squared minus 2x minus 9 equals 0, comma x. And so here's where we're going to have to just do a little bit of thinking. So they told us the answer could be written as 1 plus the square root of k. And if you look at our answers, we have two answers here. We have one that just puts a negative sign in the front, and then one that just doesn't have a negative sign in the front, and then it also changes whether it's -1 or +1. So this solution, they said, should be equivalent to one of the solutions we have here. So what we could do is we could just set our 1 plus the square root of k equal to these two answers and just see if it will tell us k. The shortcut to this is to just see that it should match, it looks like, this answer, this solution, because this solution won't have a negative sign in front of the radical. And if you look at the solution they gave us, which is 1 plus the square root of k, there's not a negative sign. So I could even just set it equal to this, and I now have an equation that I can solve for k. So I can now go to menu 3-1, and I'm going to do menu 3-1. Let's do that again. Menu 3-1. And I'm going to go to 1 plus the square root of k equals the square root of 10. And notice how I move outside the radical, so you have to hit the right arrow, plus 1, and we're solving for k. And so it's k equals 10. So we can now say the answer is B. Let's just say I didn't know which solution it was, meaning I didn't know if it should have been the parentheses one or not. If you do it with the wrong one, so I'll do the same thing, 1 plus the square root of k, but we'll do the other answer choice. So we'll do the one that says negative, parentheses, square root of 10 plus 1, comma k. It just won't give you an answer. It will say false. So that's how you can tell if you accidentally pick the wrong one at first, you won't get a wrong answer. You just may not get an answer. So if that happens, that just means try the other choice. All right. Again, since they said that there was a solution, generally that means we're probably going to try to find the solution or at least solve for x. All right, number 24. It says the dot plot represents the distributions of values in data sets A and B. Which of the following statements must be true? So the first statement says the median of data set A is equal to the median of data set B. And then 2 says the standard deviation of data set A is equal to the standard deviation of data set B. So compared to the stats question we did earlier with mean, they talked about 125 values. Here we're not doing that. We have a much smaller data set. So this is one that Desmos is now a very viable option to do. So if we were ever doing median, so we'll do the first one, we'll do the median of each data set. So we'll just do median. So I just typed median, and then we put parentheses. And then I'm just going to type all those numbers. So I'm going to do data set A first. So I'm going to do 10, 10. Let me pull it up. I typed the wrong thing again. 10, comma, 11, comma, 11, comma, 11, comma, 11, because there's 4 of them. And then 12 is twice. 13 is 3 times. 14 is twice. 15 is 4 times 2, 3, 4. And then 16 is once. So there's our median. And I'll go, and I'm going to do the same thing now for data set B. So median, again, I just have to type in. So 10 shows up twice. So 10, 2 10s, 11, 4. 14 is twice. 15 is 4 times. 16 is twice. And we can see here the medians are the same. So this statement is true. So now we just need to do the standard deviations. I don't have to retype all these data points again. This is where I'll just delete the word median, and instead I'll put standard deviation, and what we type is STDEV. So the standard deviation of data set A is 1.8371, blah, blah, blah. And then we'll do the same thing. We'll delete the word median for the second thing, and we're going to type STDEV. And so we can see data set B has a larger standard deviation. So the second statement is not true. So it's only A. So if we're doing median and standard deviation and mean, again, I do believe most of the time Desmos will work very well. There are questions where you may have to know more, and Desmos is not a great way to do it just because of the amount of time. All right, number 25. An isosceles right triangle has a perimeter of 94 plus 94 square root of 2 inches. What is the length in inches of one leg of this triangle? So I'm going to draw the triangle. So it's an isosceles right triangle. So I know it's a right triangle. And then isosceles means that the 2 legs are the same. So here they're asking for one of the legs of this triangle. So we don't know the legs. This is S, S. And then we know that this up here would be S root 2. Because an isosceles right triangle is a 45, 45, 90. And they do give us this in the reference sheet. So we do have this in the reference sheet. And they will even say S, S, S root 2. They use the letter S for this. Well, so the perimeter of this would be, we can now say is S plus S plus S root 2. And this should equal the perimeter. Well, they gave us the perimeter, so this should equal 94 plus 94 root 2. Well, we just wrote an equation that has one letter in it that we don't know, so we can now solve this equation. So we'll pull up our calculator, and we'll do menu 3-1, S plus S plus S square root of 2 equals 94 plus 94 square root of 2, comma, S. So we get S is 47 root 2. So we had to recognize that by being an isosceles right triangle, that it makes a 45, 45, 90. And then because of that, we can use our reference sheet and know the side ratios of a 45, 45, 90. And then they said perimeter, so that just means we add them up, and we can set equal to a perimeter and then solve for S. If they wanted the hypotenuse, we would just plug in for S into the S square root of 2. and just figure out what that is if they ask for the hypotenuse. All right. Number 26 says in the given equation, C is a constant. The equation has exactly one solution. What is the value of C? So this question, there's some key terms here. C is a constant, and they told us the number of solutions. If you ever told that you have a constant, maybe more than one, and you're told that you have a certain number of solutions, could be 0 solution, could be 1 solution, could be infinite, then what we are usually going to want to do is solve for x. Even though they're asking for C, we're going to solve for x first. And of course, to solve for x, we oftentimes will use our calculator. So since it's one equation, we're just using solve. So menu 3, 1. So our equation is negative 9x squared plus 30x plus C equals 0, comma x. And so here we get a square root. So if you get a square root when doing this, you are going to write down what is in the square root. So only what's inside of the either one, but I'm just going to always do the first x that I see. So C plus 25 is what's inside the square root. So it's that part that I've highlighted right there, C plus 25 on the calculator. And then depending on the number of solutions, there are that tells us what we're going to do next. So I'm going to write this little key. If they say that there are two solutions, we're going to complete that expression that I just wrote down by finishing it with greater than 0. If they say one solution, I'm going to complete it by putting equals 0. And by 0 solutions or no solution, we're going to do less than 0. So for this question, we can see that they said exactly one solution. So I'm going to put it equal to 0. And now I just made an equation that I can now solve for C. So again, I can go to the calculator, menu 3, 1, C plus 25 equals 0, comma C. So we get C equals negative 25. So if you get a square root for this sort of question, you have to remember this key up here. And that's going to tell you how you complete that expression. So you copy down what's inside the square root, and then either do equal to 0, greater than 0, less than 0, depending on how many solutions they say. Okay, so this next question is actually a great question for us to talk about because it's so similar to the one we just did. So reading it says, in the given systems of equations, P is a constant. If the system has no solution, what is the value of P? So P is a constant. So they told us we had a constant, and they told us the number of solutions. So that's where this question is so similar to number 26, is how they're phrasing it is nearly identical. Obviously, this number 27 is a system. We have now no solution instead of one, but the start of it is going to be exactly the same. We're going to solve for x. It's just if it's a system, to solve for x, we're going to do solve system. So menu 3, 7, solve system, enter. We still are using x and y. So we're now just going to type in this equation, how it is written. So control divide 3 over 2y minus control divide 1 over 4 x equals control divide 2 over 3 minus control divide 3 over 2y. Oh, I didn't move over, so I had to move over. Now I put y. Okay, so that equation looks pretty good. So then I just go to the other. I just move down, control divide 1 over 2 x. So I have to move outside, so x plus control divide 3 over 2 equals. So we have a letter next to a letter, so we have to put p times y. We don't put the times sign. It will look like it still is acceptable, meaning it will give you an answer, but it will be nothing that we want. So we hit enter. And so for this question, we did not get a square root. So we are not going to, from here, do it any more like number 26. This is where things are different. if you get a square root, you're doing what we did with number 26. If you don't get a square root, you're going to do what we're talking about right here. Usually, if you only have one constant, what you will do is just take the denominator. So the denominator of this solution for x is 3p minus 6. We're going to take the denominator and set it equal to 0. And now we're going to solve that equation. So menu 3, 1, 3 parentheses p minus 6 equals 0, comma p. Just get p equals 6. This is by far the most common way that they tend to do this question. With the square root one, you could see 2 solutions, 0 solutions, 1 solution. But without the square root, we usually are dealing with no solution, and we're usually dealing with only one constant. I'll just show you what happens if I would have typed this in, but I forgot to put the time sign, just so we can kind of see it. So I just copied and then what I typed in earlier and deleted the time sign between p and y. So I hit enter here. It still does stuff. Here's how you can tell that it messed up though. When we do solve system, we're trying to get x by itself and y by itself. So x shouldn't equal y and y shouldn't equal x. But here, if you look, we have x equals py, but this y should not be in here if we did this correctly. And then here with the other solution with the y, we have y equals something with y in it. We were trying to get y by itself. So that's where you can maybe recognize that you made a mistake here. And with these questions, the most common mistake is when you have a letter next to a letter, we forget to put the time sign. So what I just showed you. Or again, when you have a letter in front of a parentheses, you have to put the time sign as well. Those are the 2 most common mistakes. So if you ever feel like you get something a little bit odd or a little bit weird, check that you put the time signs where you need to. If you ever aren't sure if you should put a time sign, if you're like, well, I don't know, just put it. It'll never be wrong, as long as you are meaning to do multiplication. Again, with all of these questions that we've done, there are multiple ways to do it. There are other examples of questions like these where you would maybe have to do something slightly different. So remember, this is just meant for you to be a nice, easy thing to quickly review, or quickly as it's hour-long videos, but just to where you have a nice thing to look at where it's me explaining it. You can see how to type it into the CAS calculator. You can see how we use Desmos, that sort of stuff.